On today's show, I had the opportunity to sit down as a guest with Jesse Duebel and the Ahi Va podcast live at the New Mexico Outdoor Show here in Albuquerque. Look, y'all, anytime I get to talk elk and what we do here at ElkBros, it's always a blast. Y'all, you can find the Ahi Va podcast using the link in our show notes. I hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host and elk hunting coach, Joe Giglia. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Ahi Va podcast. Today, we're coming at you from the New Mexico Outdoor Adventures Hunting and Fishing Show. We're at the State Fairgrounds. This show is put on by the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish. It's an awesome opportunity for people who are interested in hunting and fishing and other outdoor recreation to come out and visit with nonprofit organizations, vendors, companies, outfitting services, look at all the newest, latest, and greatest toys when it comes to boats and camper trailers, RVs, ATVs. There's some calling contests going on. We saw some wild turkey calling. We also saw an elk calling competition. And speaking of elk calling, I'm super excited about today's guest on the show. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself in just a second. But just want to mention that if you're interested in hunting and being a master of your craft, really getting good at it and practicing it and becoming proficient in all aspects of hunting, you've got to work at it. It's not something that happens automatically. Like any skill, it has to be developed. And sometimes in developing a skill, it's helpful to get a trainer, to get a mentor, to get a coach. So with that said, I'm here with ElkBros today here at the show.
The New Mexico Wildlife Federation presents the Ahi Va podcast.
I'm excited to share with all of our listeners what ElkBros does, the program that they offer, and how they help hunters become better. So with that said, tell us about the program.
Hey, everybody, my name is Joe Giglia. I am the founder, owner, of ElkBros. ElkBros is just what you said. So basically what we do, all things elk, man. And the way this came to be is that I've been a guide for, I don't know, going on 30 years probably. And working with people, I've always been a teaching guide. You know, I've never been one of those point and shoot type guys. You know, I like to share the passion. I like to let people know what's going on in my head, to raise their level of their experience. And I had fellas that I was doing this like, dude, you ought to do something with this knowledge, man, because you just don't guide us, you teach us. And I had some good friends that they became my friends that were once my clients. And they're like, Joe, man, you know, dude, we don't want you dying and all this information going someplace. I'm like, you know something I don't know, dude? So I am a high school teacher coach for 30 years. I retired in 2015. And it's just been something that I do. So I've been able to combine my passions of coaching, my passions of elk hunting. I've been a bow hunter since, I don't know, I started shooting the bow just when I was like 6 years old, right? And when I came to New Mexico, in 1980, came out here to college, saw my first elk, and I was like, man, I'm home, right? So that's always been my passion. I've been bow hunting elk. This is my 42nd season. I've had a 90% success rate bow hunting elk public land, New Mexico. And, you know, I get a lot of people ask me two questions. Their question is, number one, how are you so successful? And number two, how do you get all those tags? And that's the thing that I hear all the time. But, you know, prior to COVID, and this is a good lesson for people. Prior to COVID, because COVID just shafted everything, it just caused a big thing to happen. But before that, you could put in for areas that were low success rates, that were difficult to get into, that people shied away from, and you could draw tags. And I looked for those areas. I wanted to go to those places that other people wanted to avoid, because I truly believe that any unit in New Mexico that has elk is great elk hunting. That's just how I believe. If there's an animal, an elk in there, I feel like I can kill that animal. I can bring it in, I can have a great hunt, and I can fill up my freezer. I truly believe when I wrap my hand around my bow and go into the woods every day, I can take an elk. That's how confident I am. So I have actually taken what I do, what my techniques, what my strategies are, and I'm teaching other people so I can help them flatten their learning curve. And we do this in a couple ways. The first way is I created an online course. It's called Base Camp. It's the first course in our ElkBros Blue Collar Elk Academy. It's the first course that's in there. And that is basically for the beginner to 15-year vet, man, that wants to raise their level or have never hunted out there. And I shorten that learning curve to help them out. The other thing that we do that is really, really cool, and this has been a process, is that we actually sell hunts that are not guided hunts, but are coached hunts. In other words, somebody will pay an amount. They will get 2 months of coaching prior to a hunt by what I call my success squad. There's 5 or 6 of us that do that, and we help people in areas of calling, gear, fitness, failure points, how to set up their bow, how to set up in the woods. So we teach them all aspects of what we do, and it's different people doing it, and we do this Zoom-based, right? So what's kind of cool is when they have different people doing it in each of those areas, you kind of associate that face with the knowledge, right? So it helps you separate out the things that you've heard. And then when they come to elk camp, they have an ElkBros coach with them, and we do not guide. We are not enabling. We are empowering to create and help them be the best DIY hunter they can be. That's our goal. Now, just like I coached athletes, your freshman year is kind of, your year of finding things out and stuff like that. You can have some success your freshman year, but generally by your senior year of doing something like this, you've got it down, right? Now, we had a gentleman 2 years ago, went through our course for 2 months. And what happens is we do our coached hunt. You know how the seasons are. So our season starts on the 15th, goes through the 24th. We usually have our actual coached camp from like the 20th to the 24th, 5 days. So I encourage them to take the knowledge and the coaching that they have and be out there on the 15th, right? We had a fella came out first day on the 15th. He has been with 4 different outfitters, has never killed an elk with a bow, comes out and on his day 1 hunting on his own with the skill set we gave him, and he calls in and kills his first elk.
Man, that is so awesome. It's interesting, Joe, because here we are on Sunday. This is a 3-day show, so right. I've been here Friday, all day yesterday. Saturday's a big day. We got thousands of people coming by the booth, talking about issues, talking about all the things. But I had a young couple yesterday from Arkansas that stopped by the booth and talking about various conservation issues that the New Mexico Wildlife Federation is working on. And your name came up in the conversation. And the wife of this young couple, again, they moved out here from Arkansas for jobs. Very accomplished hunters, but not in Western game hunting, right? These are whitetail hunters used to sitting in tree stands and hunting whitetails that way. But she hunted with you. She took your program and was able to harvest an elk on her very first outing. And she made it clear in our conversation yesterday that wasn't the expectation that was explained to her. It was all about the coaching, it was all about the education, it was all about the knowledge, that it wasn't or someone trying to sell her on the success rate or on the harvest of the animal or the killing or taking of the animal. That wasn't what got her interested. She needed to learn. She wanted to be prepared. She wanted to become a Western hunter. But it just so happened that she was able to harvest her very first elk,
Yes.
which also happened to be her very first big game animal, which was amazing. But she really, really sang the praises of your program, and it was awesome to hear that kind of a testimonial from one of your customers.
And what's really cool about that is, so the young lady that you're talking about, it so rings bells because her boyfriend bought the hunt for her, right?
Yep.
And he had told us that, she's going out, she's done whitetail, but she just doesn't know if hunting is for her. And after she got done with the hunt, she was already ready to get going for next year, man. She was like so into it and had the greatest experience. And the interesting thing about this is that she didn't go through our total program. So we also manage some ranches that we're working with. And what we try to do there is we're trying to change, we're revolutionizing the air quote outfitting, right? Instead of, I'm not looking for hunters that are out to kill. I'm looking for hunters that are out to learn about the hunt. To have the hunt experience. Now, do I want them to have success? Absolutely. But I don't want shooters, man. I mean, shooters can, they can go out and they can go on the range if they want to, and they can show how proficient they are. I mean, I want people that really want to get in touch with the nature, want to understand the animal, want to understand the aspects of the hunt, that want to honor that. And I'm not saying the shooters don't honor it. Don't get me wrong with that. It's just I want to give a different experience. I've been guiding people for almost 30 years, and I can have somebody follow behind me, stay quiet, there's your animal, set you up, boom, you're done, we clean it, and you're gone. Now, there are people that need professionals to do that, Jesse. There's people that struggle with their age or struggle with their abilities physically and different things like that need that. And there's people that don't have the time and really don't want to learn all of that other aspects. So they're looking for that. But for me, the heightened experience of teaching somebody about the hunt, understanding, the mitigating circumstances that can happen that can give you possibly a bad shot, we don't want that happening. We want to teach people all of those things and all of the etiquette and all of the honor and all of the tradition that comes with that Western hunt that makes it special so that they can be an incredible advocate as a hunter for the hunting community, and they also make things better for the rest of the hunting community when they learn to do things the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's that's so valuable and important. And one of the reasons it's so important is because as hunters, we are our own ambassadors. In other words, there's nobody that's hired to look out for the perception of hunters among the non-hunting public.
Absolutely.
Every single one of us has to do that, and we have to be taught. We have to learn. We have to be knowledgeable and educated in how to effectively do that so that we're not accidentally portraying what we do in a negative way or in a way that would be perceived as negative.
Absolutely.
By someone who doesn't understand it, who has never participated in it, because that would have a really negative impact on the future of our ability to continue doing this thing that we love so much. But I've got a question for you, Joe, because I've wrestled with this idea. Now, you and I have talked about your program, and we've talked about the work that you do, the incredible work that you do for a number of years. We run into each other at this show,
sure,
and around town and those kinds of things, game commission meetings, wherever it might be. But I accompany a lot of hunters on hunts,
Yes.
just because I love being out there.
Absolutely.
I love being part of it. Some are brand new hunters that have never hunted. Some are very experienced hunters who just need an extra strong back to help carry an elk off the mountain or something. And when I'm with a brand new hunter, it's kind of nice because they'll listen to me. I get to be the lead. I get to call the shots. I get to say where we're going, when we're moving, when we're staying, when we're calling, when we're quiet. All of the decisions, I feel comfortable and confident being the lead in making those decisions.
Sure.
When I'm asked to go with a person who's a very experienced hunter, some of our listeners will remember a 2-part episode that we had published recently here on the Ahi Va podcast with Jeremy Romero, a very accomplished elk hunter. I accompanied him on an elk hunt. He was able to take a tremendous bull, and I think I mentioned in that episode that when I'm with a really experienced hunter, I just follow instructions. It's his hunt. He's got the tag, he or she, depending on the circumstances. The hunter has a tag. If that's an experienced hunter, I don't try to interfere with their decisions. I don't try to be the lead on the decision making. Instead, I'm there to support. Where do you want me? What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to set up? That kind of thing.
Right.
And I'm curious in this coached versus guided dynamic, how those decisions are made. I'm curious if the coach is making the decisions or coach is asking the questions of the hunter who's ultimately making the decisions. Or, you hear two bugles, one's to the north, one's to the south, wind's going east to west. Which bugle are you going towards? There's a lot of variables, terrain and,
Absolutely,
weather, time of day, the sound of the bugle. There could be any number of variables that are going to help influence what decision is made. But I'm wondering if you would talk me through what that decision-making process looks like, who ultimately makes the decision, and the role of the coach as the coach and the hunter go through the process.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this out just real quick and then get back. I'm going to come back and really answer your question, because right now, in trying to change the current status quo of how people see a guide, like on this managed ranch that we have. Like when they brought us in, when they brought me in and partnered with me, they had already basically had people that paid it for a guided hunt, all right? So what I had to do is, in order to introduce what we're trying to do, before we get those people that are actually purchasing just to have a coached hunt, we had to change the dynamic. So what I did was I let people know that you're not coming on a guided hunt. You're coming on you're going to get a teaching guide. You're not going to be sticking your nose in somebody's rear end and just follow them around. They are going to be sharing with you what's in their mind, what their thought processes are. They're going to make you their partner. They're going to show you the place. They're going to show you what they're thinking there. They're going to get your thoughts, and they're going to talk about why they think, so that you become part of that process. You own your hunt rather than it just being something that you participate in. I don't want them to be a participant as far as just somebody on the ride. It's like when you're in a car and somebody else is driving, you don't even ever learn the town, right? You just in there, you get out and you're there from A to B. We don't want that. We don't want a passenger. We want somebody actively engaged. So that's what we are doing right now on the managed hunt, okay? They get my academy that gives them some information, but we haven't had the opportunity to fully engage them in all the monthly education. Now, on a coached hunt, where that's strictly what it is, where somebody's purchasing that to have that coaching, that dynamic before that, and then have that coach on there that's in the field with them, that's the answer to your question. So here's how this is how I teach my coaches. And it is so tough, Jesse, because when you're a leader, you're just a leader. You're born to lead. It's easy for you to go, get over there, go do this, always doing this, go do that, use this call. And we don't want that, because it's like I taught my coaches. When I'm on the sideline in a basketball game and I see a guy that's dribbling poorly, I don't get to go out there and take the ball from him and dribble for him. He still has to dribble. Now, I can call timeout, and he can come over, and I'm saying, the baseline's open. I need you to drive it down there. Or you can come up and you can hit the elbow and get the pass up. I'm giving him options, basically, from what we're seeing that's happening in there. But they have to make the choices, and they have to play the game. I had one of my coaches, and I got some incredible dudes. And he is an actual softball coach and does all these league things in Texas and stuff. And, he's like, man, his calling, I was just worrying about him blowing the elk out there. So I went ahead and grabbed my call, and I'm like, so you're saying when a girl's not hitting well, you back them out and you go in and hit for them so they can get on base? No, of course not. So why are you doing that for somebody else? Well, I didn't want him to. I said, what is the bottom line in this, bud? Is the bottom line that we have to ensure their success, or is the bottom line that we ensure their education, right? The experience, that they come away with the knowledge set. Yeah, they might make some mistakes, and it's going to blow some things. Look, I've been hunting elk for 41 years. I still blow things, right? The elk teach me something new every year. But what you're doing is you're making yourself more comfortable. you are not making them more comfortable. You have just enabled, you have not empowered, right? And when I say it like that, it's like, I'll give you an example of another one of my coaches. We're driving down the road, and there's a guy with a flat tire on the side, right? And we get out and we start talking to him. He's like, man, I got a flat. I don't know what to do. I've never had a flat tire or anything like that. So we're like, okay, do you have a jack? Yeah. Do you have a spare? Yeah, just like that. And I go over to the back of my truck. When I come back, my coach is changing the friggin' tire, right? And we get back in the vehicle, and I asked him, I said, okay, the guy's on his way. So if he gets another flat tire, you think he's going to know what to do then? And he looked at me, he's like, what are you saying? I was like, you didn't show him how to change a tire, you did it for him. He didn't learn nothing, man. You just enabled that dude. You did not empower him. And he's like, I get it. So to answer your question, when we're out there, especially like on a 5-day hunt, on day one when I get out there, I know that guy that's with me, he's had the education, he's heard all the verbiage, he does that, but it's so different when you got boots on the ground, right? Like you said, the terrain, the variables, the weather, the time of year. Now, they've gotten a lot of the information, but it's things like, when do I call? Where do I call from? What does that look like? How many times do I call? What's the rhythm? What's the cadence, right? Should I be calling? What would I do if I find sign? What is a scenario? When do I do it, and how do I do it? So on that day one, I'm going to give them examples. Like, we're going to go out in the morning, and I'm like, watch me this morning when I first start out. Okay, and as I do it, I am explaining every friggin' thing that I'm doing. What's going through my head, why the wind is doing, what's the thermal's doing, why I'm making a decision that I'm doing. So I am now passing that on so he can relate what he sees, hears, smells, and feels with the conditions and relate what I'm doing to them, right? So all I'm doing is putting together the strings. All right, from what their knowledge set is to what the actual situation. And then you start seeing the light bulbs go on, right? So I might go out and this is what I'm doing as I'm walking. Listen to how I'm doing it, all right? Now, and then I'm like, okay, you're up, batter up, try. So I let them take over a little bit. And then I do some coaching. All right, try this, okay? And what are you paying attention to? Because now I want them not only to be thinking about the fact that they're calling, but why they're calling and where they're calling from. Because so I teach people about scenarios. So a scenario is basically, you always want elk to feel or understand that you are another elk doing elk things, okay? And anytime I'm calling, I'm basically wanting elk to come in. I'm like having elk come to me. I'm like, here I am. Come to me. So I see guys that sometimes they call and they're standing in the bright sun, or they're standing next to a tree where if an animal came out, there's no way they could draw. They don't have any opportunity because they didn't think of every calling session as a setup as part of a scenario. Do you follow me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we try to not only get them thinking about what calls they're doing, but now not only are they dribbling, well, they're thinking about the offense. They're thinking about the defense. They're thinking about where that shot has got to go. They're thinking about where their teammate's going to be so they can get that pass to them. I relate it all to sports because that's my background, and I think a lot of people understand the sports aspect of it, right? It really starts to bring them in. So I am coaching, giving examples, just like we do drills, right? So we're doing drills. I hand it over to them. Let's have you do it. I coach it as we go through it, and then we move on to the next thing. And I'm telling them why. I'm giving them options. Okay, this is option A, what I could do, and here's why I would do it. And this is what's happening at this time of the year. But what if I heard, saw, or smelled this? What would I do then? And I tell them, and I show them, and I do that. So what I'm doing is giving them, associating their skill sets with boots on the ground and getting them ready to be that player on the floor that can make their own decisions. So day 2, I'm still doing some of that and maybe extending it into other areas depending on the situations that come up. And that's the great thing about elk hunting. so many variables of what's going to happen, right? Nothing ever happens exactly like the way you think it's going to happen, but there are things that, like, you can go out, you've taught everybody all of this calling, like a lot of times everybody's always teaching you, okay, you go out, you locate, boo, locate bugle, boo, you come and locate bugle. Most people today, if they don't get a response, they're like, there's no elk. I don't hear nothing. Nothing's talking. There is no rut. The rut is late. You have all these things. It's too windy. It's too hot. It's too dry. It's too wet. I believe in every condition, there's an advantage. We do the same thing again as coaches. No matter what our opponent is, what the home situation is, we have to find our advantage, their weakness, their disadvantage to exploit and use our strengths to take advantage. So I'm teaching them how to do that as we do it. Now, by day 3, I'm like, where are we going? Right? Why are we going there? Okay, and if they give me something that there never is a wrong answer, because you know as well as I do, man, you know, they might say we're going here and I don't think it, and we can go there and everything could blow up, right? But one thing, if they say something that I don't necessarily think is real solid, all I do is give them additional options and why they're additional options and still let them make the decision. If they're sticking with their A plan, they're sticking with their A plan, and I'm right there. Now, when I go with them as a coach, I am also their partner. So if they, because of what they've learned about partner calling and stuff, and they say, and we have a bull that's going, and he thinks, oh, he's like, I think this bull's right up here. Joe, I want you going off. I want you setting up, dropping back, and I want you to call for me. Absolutely, I'll call for you then. But it's not me going, I want you sitting here, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to call from here. We have reversed the roles. Do you follow me?
Yep.
And so when we reverse those roles like that, once they get out the following year, if they decide not to do this with us again, but they go out with a partner, they know exactly what to do with that partner. They take that role. They have that confidence. And you know as well as I do, success, a lot of it in anything you do is about confidence, right?
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question on all of those aspects, but really the decision making, I teach them how to make the decision, and then I allow them to make the decision. Just like we have to allow our kids sometimes to fail, right? And then learn from it. The only thing is I can kind of head them off by giving them suggestions and then watch how they take it. And then when something starts to go a little bit awry, you know, on that, sometimes we just let it blow. Like this year, we had 4 guys in camp this year. Nobody killed. Everybody was in a situation that made freshman mistakes, okay? So they were allowed to make those mistakes. We learned from those mistakes. And it's funny. When something's given to you, you really don't, and when you're enabled like that, you really don't own it. When you make a mistake and you know because of the knowledge you've been giving it that's a mistake and you know what the alternatives are, you own that situation. The next time you're in it, it's like you're not having to guess like what I did. It's not, you know, I always compare stuff like to a video game. You start on level 1 and you're going all around, you're doing this, you're picking up that, you're doing this, and you're trying to get to level 2, and then you go through this hole and you die. So you do it all again, and then you go, and then you die. And then you do this time and time again. Finally, you get to the next level, but it took you so long to get there, you're not sure how you got there in the first place, so you still make a lot of those same mistakes the next time you play the game. Well, the way we do it is they do have the information. They do have the knowledge set. So when they make that mistake, it becomes an aha moment, and they own it. They don't have to keep making the same mistake, right?
And yeah, that's really helpful, and that definitely did answer my questions. It makes me have tremendous respect for the level of discipline that you and your guides have, because just knowing myself, when I'm out there with somebody and you're working hard, right? I mean, elk hunting is hard. You're in steep terrain, you're climbing, you know, all kinds of treacherous country at times, and you get in position where you're on wild elk. There's an opportunity to connect. And as someone with a lot of experience, I have a lot less than you. You got 41 years of experience doing this. You see that this isn't going to work out. And to have the discipline to allow it to not work out is really admirable. I mean, I completely recognize and understand and appreciate why you do that. But I'm trying to internalize and put myself in those shoes, in those boots rather. And boy, it would be tough. It would take me time to learn how to keep my trap shut and not intervene and get involved when I need to allow the process and the hunter to go through the process without that intervention. That would be tough for me.
Yeah, so you have to ask yourself, really, who is this about? Is it about me and making myself happy because we got the kill? Or is this about them and their learning experience, right? About them owning it. So we're actually, people like you and myself that do this thing, like I was a very selfish hunter. And because of that, my daughters didn't get the experiences that they should because I wanted that time in the woods, right? And I was so hell-bent on being successful and filling my tag that I didn't allow that my kids be out there and allow them to make the mistake and go, oh, it's okay, I just was way too serious about it. And that actually helped me in this process to allow people to be able to do that. Now, we can be in there and before they go to do what they're going to do, talk about the options so that it's just like when I send them into the game. I'm like, okay, we only have 23 seconds. If we miss here, we're going to call a timeout. If they're going to take the baseline, what are we going to do? What do you want to think about? What if they're going to come on the side? I can remind them and give them all the cues that we do as coaches. But once timeout's over and they head into position, it's all their game, man. They got to do it, right? So if they tell me, all right, Joe, I'm doing this, and here's what I'm doing. I'm going to move ahead. I want you to come back. I want you to do that. And I start calling for them. I'm going to give them my best rendition, do the best I can for them. But it's still up to them because now they have the skill set to recognize getting themselves in the right setup, getting themselves where they have the correct shooting lanes, making sure that if that bull is moving to an area that they're not going to have a shot, that they actually move and they're not, they don't freeze up, lock up, and worry about blowing that elk out because they know they have to put themselves in position or they're not going to have any shot, right? Understanding that if a bull walks by them, they're not going to draw when the head gets behind a tree because they've learned from me that if you draw when that head's behind a tree, they're going to catch the end of your draw and they're going to do the thing that elk do every daggum time is they're going to stop and look at you broadside. And if you draw when that head's behind the tree, they're going to come out on the other side. They're going to catch that. They're going to stop and look at you with a tree in their kill zone. So they know to let that animal come into the open. They're going to draw. That elk is going to stop and look at them, and they're going to pop them. It's a fatal flaw that elk have that we teach our guys to do that. So they have that knowledge prior to, and they just need to perform. That's all they got to do. They got to perform. It's the same thing, dude. I mean, I can't tell you how many times as a coach, like as a basketball and football coach that I did, people come up and they're like, well, why didn't they do da-da-da-da? And it's like, you don't think they weren't coached to do that? But they still have to perform. They have to do it themselves on the floor. I cannot play the game for them. I can teach them how to make decisions on the fly. I can give them all of the skill sets, but they got to play the game, right?
Yeah. Man, that's super awesome. I've got so many questions, man. I'm just so intrigued and interested and fascinated by this entire model because it's different than anything I've ever seen. I mean, I've seen a lot of different structures of assisted hunting, if you will, in different ways, but right. This is completely unique. And so I'm going to back up just a little bit. Sorry to be so scattered here, but going back to the coaching, the classes, the preparation in advance of the hunt.
Sure.
I'm just assuming here, so you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that changes based on every hunting experience. In other words, or every hunting potential. What I mean by that is, there's times that I'll draw a hunt in a deep, remote wilderness area.
Sure.
And if I'm getting coached on gear, I need to be coached on backpack gear. I'm talking about weight. I'm talking about a backpack hunt. Maybe you have a spike camp. Maybe you're bivvy hunting. I mean, it's a completely different list of gear requirements.
Yep. And
a completely different set of expectations than maybe a hunt that's going to be done more on a 2-track forest road system, where an area that
absolutely
has logging roads and things like that, and you're set up in a base camp and you're not bivvying out for days at a time. So is each coaching session or educational preparation curriculum specific to the type of hunt that hunter would be expected, that hunter's signed up for, essentially?
Yeah. So
New Mexico offers such a variety of different type of hunts.
No, actually, we prepare them to be able to do other things beyond us. So, like, for example, my gear guy Duplantier. Guy is just, I am not a gear guy. Man, you put a pack on me, a knife in here, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, toilet paper and water, and I'm ready to rock, right? Okay? I'm not the gear guy. Now, I've done things in the last couple years. I've done some hammock trips where I go out and I've hunted on my own and stuff like that, packing everything on my back. It was a really cool experience, and I've gained some of that knowledge. But over the years, all of my success has been basically in a base camp, backpack on my back, taking a 4-wheel, getting to an area, hunting from that, parking that bike and hunting from there. But I've got a whole crew with all different types of skill sets. And Guy Duplantier is that guy he's that dude that is spending 15, 20, days back in the wilderness, going back there, everything on his back. And he's got all the aspects of that, from everything you're going to cook with, how you're going to do your water, how you're going to filter, thinking about your mileage when you're taking something out. When you do get an animal, how far back can you really commit into the wilderness, not only to kill that animal, but to get that meat out safely so it doesn't spoil. So, and every hunter that comes in with us has to be prepared to spike out, so they have to be prepared to go out with a camp on their back, because that is something that we try to do with some of them as well. Like on this last year, 2 of us went out, 2 of us spiked out with 2 different hunters in 2 different directions. In fact, me and my hunter got caught in a hailstorm that everything temperature dropped down to 20 degrees. This is real. This is what happens, man, when you're 6-8 miles away from everything and you have nothing but what's on your back. And if you're not ready, you're going to be wet, you're going to be cold, and you're putting yourself in a survival situation. So, yes, we do that. We want to give them, and what I tell my coaches is, yeah, okay, they're going to be in a base camp with us, right? That's going to be what we're doing. We're going to go to an area, we're going to start hunting from there. But I want them ready for whatever style they want to do once they leave us. I don't want to find out that somebody that left us had a failure out in the woods that put them in danger after they left. I want them to have a skill set that's going to help them go to that level of however they want to hunt, right? Some people want to go solo. Some people want a partner. Some people want, 3 people together, 4 people. We've hunted with as many as 5 people together in the woods and killed elk right there in front of us. So, it's like when people, they talk about, well, you can't have that many people out there, you won't see anything. Baloney, man. You just got to have a skill set and a coordination and communication so you can make it happen. It all comes down to playing the wind. It all comes down to everybody knowing their role and how to communicate. I don't care if it's 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So yeah, we actually do teach that, man.
Man, that's
and you're showing
cool.
Your knowledge, though, Jess, because what I've heard coming out of your mouth is somebody has an extensive elk hunting skill set, man. So
yeah, well, that's really awesome. I love that. And another question I can't help but ask, and you've probably been asked this before, but you're hunting mostly public land on these trips, right?
Correct.
These are public land trips.
Now the one where the young lady went to, again, now that is a managed ranch that we were doing something and changing that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But the hunts that we do, yes, public land.
So one issue that is, and you've heard this 100 times, so I apologize to be so boring with the question, but I just can't help but ask. one issue that guides often talk about is the situation where you take a hunter out and you take them to a spot, and then you come back a year or 2 years later, and a person that you took to the spot is in the spot that you took them to, and there's this whole like kind of ethical debacle that goes on, and this ethical debate, and what's acceptable, what's not, what's appropriate, what's not, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on that, given that you're taking people out with the primary objective of making them super successful do-it-yourself hunter folks, where a lot of the guides that I've heard this perspective from are guides who would rather have the client book again and again, and I'm sure you get plenty of repeat customers, but again, the end goal sounds like eventually, after one trip or two or three or whatever it takes, eventually the idea is, like you said with kids, you let them go.
Right.
You know, you let them go out on their own and be successful without the coach present. How do you feel, or what are your expectations with regard to the spots that you're sharing with people on these kind of coached hunts?
Yeah, so that's a mixed bag, and I'll tell you, even like when I'm hunting by myself, you know, people in my area know that I'm successful, and they know my history of elk hunting. So people in my area focus on places where they find out where I'm going, and they think, okay, that guy's successful, I can do that too, right? Well, so they end up all going there as well, right? But and to me, it's like I hunt high use areas anyway. And where I'm at is like, okay, people, if they go there, it's like anything. It's like I have people that, when I coach track and field, you know, we had an incredible successful career doing that. So I would go and give talks and do seminars on track and field. I could give you, Jesse, my exact system. I could give you everything that I do in practice. I could give you everything that I do as far as the skills. I can give you how I do it, the workouts. I can do all of that. Does that mean you're going to be a state championship team? You know, just because you have that, you still have to do it. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the time. You have to develop the skill set, and you got to be a friggin' grinder to make it happen. You got to believe, you got to achieve, you got to do all of that. So even though people are coming to the area where I'm at, I bet I could give them the exact place that I killed an animal, man. It doesn't mean they're going to kill anything. They still have to do and put in the time and the work that I do. There is no magic wand. You know, you can't, that's like people look at success rates. Everybody goes, what's the success rate for an area? And I tell them, you know what? A success rate does not tell you anything about the quality of the hunt. It tells you about the quality of the hunters that we're hunting. Right? So you can have an area that didn't have a high success rate because the hunters sucked that went in there. You know, they didn't put in the time. They went out there for one weekend, or maybe they were getting up late and they decide they want to do more camping, do more drinking, or something like that. And so they're not putting in the stuff it takes to be able to be successful. There's no, and this is the beauty of it, Jess. There's no difference in success in the woods as there is in success in your family, your job, in your life. It takes work, it takes dedication, motivation, and getting daggum after it. And sometimes you got to take your lumps and bumps. You got to realize that it's not all peaches and cream. You go on an elk hunt, there are going to be 10 days of grueling work for 30 seconds of the most incredible adventure of your life. Because sometimes you don't see an animal, or you don't get an encounter, you don't have that stuff happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just all changes in like 30 seconds. And people, I always hear this from hunters, it happens so fast, right? You know?
Yeah.
It happens so fast. So to answer your question is, we've dealt with this already. Like, we had one class that came and hunted with us. The biggest problem is they want to continue hunting with us. So they want to be close to us, and they want to be able to come and see us at camp and stuff like that, right? They just enjoy our company. So I really wish September was 6 months long so I could hunt with everybody, but it's limited, it's finite. But the fellow I told you about that killed the elk on day one came back, and he said, Joe, how do you feel about me hunting there? I was like, bro, it's public land, period. You have to make the decisions where you're going. And he goes, well, I don't want to step on your toes. I was like, you're like any other hunter I come across. If I have to change my game plan because of what you're doing, then that's on me. If you have to change your game plan because of what I'm doing, that's on you. So I don't really stress over that, and I mean, like my guys are always like, man, don't be telling them our honey holes, and I'm like, they still got to do it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and pretty soon, and that's like I when we sell tags, right? Because the only way that we can do this, because the question you haven't asked me is like, well, how do you get tagged for these guys? I want to hit that for a second in here. But I don't really stress too much over it. As long as in fact, I tell them, come by camp and visit us, man. I enjoy their company. Let's talk. I want to be a good ambassador, right? I want them to be successful. I want them to have great experiences. That's what our bottom line should be. Right? Our bottom line is man, if we help other people help us. And because I don't stress over people coming to this one place that they hunted before, they might go to another place another time and go, Joe, man, come try this out, right? And I have so many people that do that. They're so willing to give me places to go. Why should I act like I own an area? Now, yeah, if they came in and they went, I'll tell you this too, I didn't tell them where to go. They did the work. So they had to do all the scouting. They had to do all the e-scouting. They had to determine where we went. They had to do all of that. So it's not like it was my place that we're going back to. That place that Adam killed his bull that year, he went back up there. He found that. He put himself at 11.5. coming from California on the first day, had his head splitting from altitude sickness. He put himself in that situation. I didn't put him there. So I'm nobody to tell him not to come back, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the question you didn't ask is like, well, you got these people that are buying this hunt. How do you get them on public land, right? Well, there's some people that wait for a draw to happen and they offer a service. The only problem with that is we have to be permitted, right, for a certain place in a certain area. So you have to plan some things out. So what I look for, and it's been very, very difficult to do, is we've actually had to purchase unit-wide landowner tags and then charge above that to be able to pay my coaches. So, and get this, I mean, what has happened since COVID and where tags are going and everything like that. Well, last year, for 2 months of education, a coach there, meals every night, snacks during the day provided, we charged $6,500. Now you take a guided experience where you're just going to go out there and you're going to follow somebody and then you leave with no knowledge, and we're doing all of that, and most places are charging above that. You know what I mean? And we did it for $6,500. This year, because of the jack in the prices of tags, we're going to have to go $7,000 because I'm paying tag prices, right? So that I can bring people into a camp and then be able to teach them. Our goal, though, is to have that experience and keep developing what we're doing, because I think it's changing the game. This is something totally different. In fact, no state is ready for what I do. Like New Mexico, I am not guiding, right? And the only reason I give them food and stuff, I originally had them bring in their own food, their own tent, no services. So if I'm not giving any services, I'm really not outfitting, right? But try to convince or put an officer in that position coming out where a guy is with somebody from an organization. It's going to be something that would have to be tried out in courts. That's where it would be ended up. So what I did was I just went and got my outfitting license. I got my guides so that they are licensed as well, so that we can consult and teach and coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're paving a new path in unexplored territory, and so it's really remarkable, and it's really amazing, and our listeners will absolutely know how I feel about E+ and how I feel about unit-wide elk tags, and you and I have had those conversations
absolutely.
a lot. And while I do think that there are some significant deficiencies in our E+ system, I would also say that what you're doing with it and what you're doing with those tags is really remarkable, and I think you're making the absolute best possible use of that system that I've often been very vocal about my disagreement with, but I really appreciate and value what you're doing with it. So thank you for that, Joe, and thank you for the mentorship that you're providing to all these hunters and teaching them to be ethical and to operate with integrity and be good stewards of the land, and also be good ambassadors for the sport so that we can continue doing it. Going back to the hunt itself, as I help new hunters, which I do periodically, and then new hunters will draw a tag. If I'm available, I'm happy to accompany them and help out or whatever. One of the things that a lot of new hunters I've experienced that a lot of new hunters are very intimidated with the process that occurs once the elk has expired.
Yep.
It's the field dressing, it's the pack out, it's the caping, it's that stuff. Because even hunters who hunted smaller game, when you get a 700-pound animal on the ground and you walk up to it, that can be a very intimidating moment for a lot of people. So what role does ElkBros play in that process? Yeah,
so we're there to talk them through it. We want them hands-on. It's going to take a little longer because they're hands-on, but we're absolutely doing that so that they can, I've got actual video of a guy doing it. I don't know, it's probably 10 o'clock at night doing an animal, Adam, the guy that got his when I wasn't there, he literally, because he was high enough, he literally called me from the top of the mountain. He's at 11.5. He's up 4 hours on a trail, calls me and says, Joe, man, he says, I'm really scared. He's like, I'm not feeling right. Things are I'm feeling a little confused. I'm really worried about this animal. I've got the quarters. And what I loved about that was his concern for the animal. So A+ on what we've been teaching him, right? And I just told him, I was like, Adam, okay, the situation you're in right now, you have altitude sickness. It's going to be 30 degrees tonight. You have the quarters off. I want you to get them over. Make sure that you have them hanging right where it's at. I want you to drop everything, get back to camp. I want you to start drinking some water, eat some food, get in your bag, go to sleep. I'll see you in the morning. And I grabbed some guys and we were at his tent by daylight to be with them to help him actually get that animal out, right? But one thing he learned in that was having to pack some of that animal back and forth to his camp was he was not sufficiently mentally prepared for that, or physically. He put himself in a situation that he wasn't necessarily ready for, and he's like, I'm so glad I had you guys come up to help me. So that was in itself a learning process for him, right? So, we actually are there to do that, and we do some talk of that. And I've got, I'm partnering with a guy, Mike, that has an app called CutRite, CUTRITE. The CutRite app is an actual app that you can go to, and it will show you how to break down an animal, right? So we're partnering with them. So every person that takes my academy, and they get my academy when they buy this hunt. So everyone that gets that, they get 30% off of these calls. They get 30% off the CutRite app. I want to make sure that they have that in their hand. And I'm actually partnered with some guys right now that we're making an app called Echo that actually, I guess the best way to say it is it's an enunciation app that actually coaches and teaches them how to make the elk sounds visually and audibly. It's a practice-focused app for elk calling. Is what it is. Yeah,
that's state of the art. I've never seen anything like that before.
It's never been done. It's so cool. You usually have to listen to somebody, and then you're like, but you don't know really how good you sound. And if you're tone deaf, you really don't know. And so it's not only auditory, it's visually in the way that you can do this. So it's a pretty cool deal.
So you've got over 40 years of elk hunting experience. You've accomplished a success rate that's almost unheard of in Western hunting, period. Not just elk hunting, but in Western hunting, period. You do most of that with a bow and arrow. You're a very proficient caller, but just recently you actually came out with your own elk call. Is that right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. So we have our own reeds that we manufacture that are signature reeds. And I wanted things that were specific to what I try to do in the woods and that would help people in the woods with certain aspects. So we have those signature reeds, and we've got one that's coming out that's called the Juice. That it has a pallet dome on it that's never been seen. It's my X series. It's never been done. Wait till you see it, Jeff. It's pretty cool. But the other thing, though, the thing that I really think is the key to success is my bugle tube, the Soloist. And the Soloist is not a wiffle bat form type of bugle tube. It is a flex that I can actually curl under my arm and throw my calls back behind me. It has a mouthpiece on it that is baffled and constricted so that you get back pressure like you do with those other tubes. But it lets me do the things that are going to make an animal think that I am further back than what I am. I never want them to know my location. Once they know my location, I'm pegged. So if I have a bull that is going to hang up at 80 yards, which you hear everybody, he was out there at 80, 100 yards, right? Well, if I'm throwing my calls looking forward at my target animal, throwing my calls back behind me so that he thinks I'm another 40, 50, or 60 yards back, now if that bull hangs up, now he's 40 yards from me, 30 yards from me, instead of 180 yards out there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm real proud of the Soloist because it's been to do something like that and to see people being successful with it out in the woods. You don't understand what that means, to help people have success using something that you created. I mean, as a kid, there was Larry D. Jones, there was Wayne Carlton, Dwight Shue, all these guys that we looked up to, man, that we're buying their calls. These guys are rock stars,
Yeah.
And the fact that people out there using something I'm producing is like, because I've definitely never thought of myself as a rock star. but to be doing that, I honestly, Jess, I don't know if you know what that means to me in my heart and soul, man.
Man, well, that's cool, Joe. And you may not think of yourself as a rock star, but I can guarantee you that a lot of the people that you've helped out, a lot of the people that you've taken hunting and that you've mentored and that you've coached definitely do think of you as a rock star.
Oh.
And I'm just so excited about this program and excited for what you're doing for hunting in general. And I'd like you to tell folks where they can find you, where they can learn more about you, where they can sign up, social media. You've got your own podcast.
Yes, we do.
Talk about that. Let's get my listeners listening to your podcast.
So it's called Blue Collar Elk Hunting. I'm super proud of that. If you have Apple Podcasts on your phone and you simply go in and you put elk hunting in the search, it's going to come up with Elk Talk, which is Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson, who are phenomenal and been doing it for years. And then you're going to see Blue Collar Elk Hunting. We're usually second or third in the list in the nation on the podcast. And you can listen to our podcast and pick up all of this free information because we do not hold back. We teach, we coach, we share. You're going to also listen. We do that like we're around the campfire. We want people to feel like we're talking to them, not at them. We want to invite them in. It's me and the boys most of the time. Sometimes I do some with individuals. Like I have people that will send me an email that they've been successful. I give them a phone call and we have a conversation and we make that into an educational show right there, right? So I'll do some where it's just me and some people, but most of the time it's me and the boys, and we're talking about specific aspects of elk hunting. And I tell you what, when I started this, I was like, well, what are we going to do after the first 30 shows? I'm like, how do we keep talking about this? And we're on 213, bro. I mean,
wow.
We have that many episodes, and most of them are an hour and a half to 2 hours long. We do a mailbox. We talk to each other. Again, it's like a campfire thing. We do shout outs to our listeners. So you can find that. It's called Blue Collar Elk Hunting. If you want anything else Elk Bros, you just go to ElkBros, ElkBros.com. And in there you can find everything that we're doing. You can find stories, you can find our gear, you can find our academy, all of that's there. Or you can go to Instagram. We're at ElkBros on Instagram, ElkBros. So everything's right there. Our outfitting side is ElkBros Adventures. But it's all tied into ElkBros. And we've got some other cool things that are coming. We've got some really cool stuff that we're preparing right now too. I'm so excited about helping people have experiences, because right now, people out in the country right now that want to do this, our uncles aren't doing it, our grandpas aren't doing it, our dads like they used to, right? We always got passed down. And if you go to a pro shop, you don't know what questions to ask, and it's so intimidating. If you go on a forum, you get blasted, So we've got things that we're doing besides just elk hunting. We're going to try to extend this out so that people can actually find mentors in any outdoor type of event. So I'm real excited about that and what that's going to be too.
Well, that's awesome, Joe. You're providing an unbelievable service to a lot of people, helping folks out, man. It's so appreciated, and even here at the show. I mean, you're coaching people, hundreds of people a day, stopping by the show, and I know because I hear you calling. I hear you teaching them how to call. I hear you explaining why you're calling and what the call means and the expected outcome of a particular call, and so all of that outreach really means a lot to me. At the New Mexico Wildlife Federation, we rely on hunters and anglers to support the organization. We rely on hunters coming into our ranks.
Right. Absolutely.
What we've seen over, previously, this is getting a lot better, but we used to see that the average age of hunters was going up and up and up, and we weren't bringing enough new people in.
Sure.
We weren't bringing enough young people in. And you're making a tremendous impact in that space, and I really want to thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for your time today on the show, man. It's so great to have you on. I've been wanting to do this. We've talked about it for years, it seems like, and we finally made it happen. So thanks for doing it, Joe. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse, man, and everything that Look, dude, you and I have talked, and when you're in a position where you're trying to make things better, it's always going to be, look, if you're not in trouble, if you're not making somebody mad, you're not doing anything, right? And the Wildlife Federation has been a huge part of our life up in Cimarron, New Mexico. I mean, there's things and battles that have had to happen up there, and there will always be that. You and I have not agreed on everything eye to eye, but that doesn't matter. That's how we grow, man. If all of us are always yes people agreeing, then we don't grow as a society, as people, as a community. We need each other, and we need those ideas, and we need to feed off. But the bottom line is understanding that we all want the same thing in the end, right? Yep. We want people to have this experience. We want people's lives to be changed, enriched, and to have those opportunities. In that, we're on the same team no matter what. And it doesn't have to be the same way, but by working together, and all of us are as hunters and have to understand that and quit digging into each other about what weapon or the style or that cultural thing that they do because of the region they're in and how they were brought up. We all have passions, man. As long as it's legal, it's following laws, it's honoring the animal, we need to support each other and quit all this in stuff and start bringing other people from the outside in.
Man, I couldn't agree more. Super well said, Joe. What a strong point to end on. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, Jess. Thank you, man.
Thanks for listening to the Ahi Va podcast, produced by Driftwood Outdoors.